All right, we're moving on to business item number 9, which was added as an amendment to our agenda. And this does not have a staff report attached to it. Councilmember Bess Campbell asked that this particular business item be added to the agenda. Councilmember Councilmember Bess Campbell.
I just have a statement, just a quick little get the conversation started statement. So for reasons that I'm not going to get into from the dais, I have lost confidence in Commissioner Duchastel. Unfortunately, efforts to afford the commissioner an opportunity for improvement in his position have been rejected. And given this unwillingness to remediate some troubling behaviors that we've seen, I just don't have any confidence that he should remain on the Planning Commission. I don't want to detail anything from the dais. I want to afford him a little bit of privacy and anonymity, but I have some grave concerns that I think some council members have seen in email, and I needed to voice that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else would like to make a comment about this particular item? Okay, seeing none.
Yes, if I might.
So, Councilmember Boundy-Sanders.
I appreciate the kickoff on this agenda item. What Councilmember Bess Campbell is referring to is that Commissioner Duchastel de Montrouge filed a harassment
Point of order, Madam Mayor, that's actually not what I was referring to in my comments. Okay. So I would ask the council member if she would like to refer to that. She could say that that is her opinion, but I am referring to something different. Thank you.
Point of order accepted.
Oh, understood. But the fact does remain that Commissioner Duchastel de Montrouge has filed a harassment complaint against the city. I voted against adding this agenda item because in his complaint, Mr. Duchastel de Montrouge cited a concern about retribution. Retribution was his word. I think retaliation is the more common term. And my concern is that having this agenda item at all either continues the harassment that he documented or begins retaliation, neither of which is good for the legal status of the city. So I would ask my fellow council members to be very careful to remain fact-based rather than to work on vague accusations that actually have very questionable merit.
Point of order, I question this continued use of questionable behavior when I brought up an issue and I am being afforded, I'm being attributed with things that I personally have not done, not said, or conducted with here. So I would ask the council member to please keep her comments to, as she said, the facts. Thank you.
Point of order taken. Okay.
Yes, I'm referring to the incidents that I was not referring to anything that you thought or any intentions you had. I was referring to the incidents that Mr. Duchastel de Montrouge listed in his complaint. So let's be clear. There was a complaint with many rows of incidents listed with dates and descriptions of what the incidents were that he attributed as harassment and bullying. So I think that it's probably a good, my advice to the rest of the council would be to take a step back from this, collect our breaths, and having read the complaint, there is a lot in it that was accusations that do not have accusations made against him that do not have any substantiation. My concern is that there have been many accusations against him that are general, unsubstantiated, and I feel as a council member and morally that it is up to me and all of us to stay on the right side of the law, stay on the right side of human decency. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other council member like to make a comment about this? Councilmember Taylor?
I've got just a question. If we appoint a commissioner, are they appointed for a term or are they appointed at pleasure? What's the criteria?
Your commissioners are appointed for an established term. The code does provide that council has the authority to remove a planning commissioner by a majority vote for stated reasons. Those are neglect of duty, conflict of interest, malfeasance in office, or other just cause, or for unexcused absences for more than 3 consecutive regular meetings. And if council wanted to entertain the discussion, the provision about just cause does have some meaning from Washington case law in terms of it being not just any arbitrary or capricious reason, but an actual reason bearing on the performance of duties.
Short of dismissal, is there a censure or any other? Because the activity that I'm aware of needs to be at least publicly, brought to his attention. It's not the behavior of a commissioner representative for the city. So
I would say you have stated in the code specific parameters for removal. There's nothing about measures short of removal, such as censure. I think the council, by majority vote, could censure a commissioner for conduct not arising to the level of warranting removal, or perhaps if the council decides simply it isn't going to remove a commissioner for that conduct, but wishes to censure them, which is in essence a form of basically verbal admonition.
Okay. Any other council member have a comment about this? Councilmember Boundy-Sanders.
Because this issue has the topic of retribution retaliation has been raised, could we get some clarity? What is once a harassment complaint has been filed, what constitutes retribution or retaliation?
Well, I think certainly council, if it removed a commissioner after that commissioner made some well-founded complaint, the commissioner could have an argument about retaliation. Those questions are always very fact-specific in terms of what were the merits of the supposed protected activity of the person claiming retaliation, what were the merits of their claim, what are the merits of the justification for the action that was taken against that person. Just because somebody, for example, makes a whistleblower complaint, or in this case makes a more general complaint about conduct of largely unspecified people, that does not entirely protect them from processes that it would otherwise apply, including council's ability to remove an officer or commissioner for any of the stated causes.
Okay, so thank you for that. I appreciate that it's fact specific and that you can't give a general answer when specifics matter. But let me just ask you about some specific types of activities and ask whether they might be retaliation or retribution. You've already said that dismissal might be retaliation or retribution. Would defamation on the street in writing on social media potentially be retribution or retaliation?
I would not view that as action by the city or by the city council. I would view that as individual conduct of some individual citizen.
Okay.
That would not be something the city would be responsible for.
Okay, so if it were defamatory comments by city council members of that person on social media, that would still be just the behavior of the individual city council member?
Generally, that would be my inclination, unless they purported to be speaking on behalf of the city, but I'm not aware of those facts.
Okay. Would encouraging family members to continue to harass that person?
Point of order on this blaming of family members for presumed harassment. I've seen no evidence of this, and to determine that someone as part of a family is part of a conspiracy of harassment is not evidenced in the record, and they are also private citizens, and they have a right not to be mentioned on the dais. Thank you.
So I would like to just take a moment. I think that this conversation is extremely unproductive, wrought with emotion, and that this is not a good time for us to have this discussion. I believe that we should, if the council desires, table this and set aside a time in the future.
Madam
to
Mayor,
discuss.
I'm sorry,
Actually,
I have the
speaking.
floor. I have the floor.
I understand that, but I am interrupting you. I am interrupting the motion of the meeting and the motion of the conversation, and I am making a request that we table this discussion for a future meeting, and I would like someone to make a motion
Point
to
of
do
order. Point of order, Madam Mayor. You're supposed to recognize me for a point of order.
Point of order, please. This is turning into condescension here. If there is a point of order, I believe you are supposed to state to the chair the purpose of the point of order.
You are
So I
supposed to
reserve-
state that you have a point of order.
So
and then the
I
chair is
reserve
supposed to recognize.
the right to collect my thoughts, okay? So, Councilmember Boundy-Sanders, what is your point of order?
My point of order is that the council added this to the agenda. I have the floor. And I don't believe that it's proper for you to steal the floor from me and try to send the agenda item your way when I have the floor.
Well, I think what I'm trying to do is interject in an unproductive conversation and suggest if the council decides to move this to another time when emotions are not so high, okay?
My response to that is that if emotions are high to my general, non-specific, unnamed questions, I think that it's reasonable for me to ask some questions about what constitutes retaliation and what doesn't without naming names. If that is truly, literally what I'm trying to get at in general. Could these things be retaliation?
Okay, your point of order is accepted, okay? So you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate that. So, next question would be, are unsubstantiated, could unsubstantiated criticisms be retaliation?
So again, I guess maybe a couple of observations. One, Councilmember Boundy-Sanders, I sense you're talking about individual council members or perhaps commissioners, but individual people making comments about other people in the community. Those actions aren't imputed to the city.
Okay, so if it's done from the dais, does that, under what circumstances is a council member acting as a council member, and under what circumstances is a council member acting as an individual?
Well, I think it would take a fairly extraordinary action by the council as a collective body to trigger liability for defamation or retaliation through an official action. A specious removal for no good cause in response to, a good faith complaint, that might rise to that level. But honestly, this is all pretty speculative. And I guess the higher level observation I would make is that having reviewed the complaint in this case from the commissioner, it occurs to me that there's taking the allegations at face value, assuming them to be true. I didn't see anything in there that would be imputed to the city. I saw the commissioner complaining about the conduct of individual, in some cases, I think he's clearly talking about individual council members, perhaps other city officers, could be other commissioners, but consistently not complaining of conduct of the city as an entity or of the conduct of any of the administrative staff, something that the administration would have authority to investigate and act upon, but rather actions of individuals outside of that context. What I might say in the political world.
Right.
And I would not ascribe to that complaint the sort of weight that would then I would expect to turn around and be super concerned about retaliation by the city as an entity. And again, that's my client. That's my advice to you is in your role as officers of the city. And so my focus may be more narrow than yours or some of your colleagues on the council. But I am not seeing a significant, and I certainly would say so if I saw it, if I started to develop a concern that the city could be exposed to a claim of retaliation, some other sort of civil rights violation, you certainly would hear me saying that. But I guess I would just reiterate my observation that largely what seems to be complained of here are actions probably fairly characterized as political machinations that are not something that any of us here have any particular jurisdiction or control over. And to date, I haven't seen evidence of action that concerns me in terms of city liability.
Okay, thank you. That is super helpful, and I'm very grateful. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Taylor.
Talking about activity that's coming back at us and retribution, Sunday morning, just show of hands, how many people received an email and text from a council member asking for about 6 items using official city tones for records request? 6 files. Okay, that's retribution, and it's acting on behalf of the city, telling us what to do on personal accounts. So I don't. I see it almost as a punchback on the records request that was submitted last week and the response. So that I have to point that out, and I'd like to have that looked at, because that is stepping outside of the council jurisdiction and ability. I think that's Katie and Brandon's role to tell us what to do. So, and it was meant to threaten. I know that commissioners were a little upset. You know, I talked to commissioners and they didn't know what was going on.
I'm unclear on whether you were seeking input from me on that question, or Madam Mayor.
I think I've already directed the question to Brandon and maybe to you as far as use of our position and jurisdiction, stepping outside the line to harass a group of members. So you have the chain meeting, you have things going on outside of the official record.
So we're gonna move on to public comment. So we're gonna end that business item and we're gonna move on to public comment. Madam Clerk, is there anybody signed up for public comment?